This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, the Yankees take 2 out of 3 in Colorado. We're talking a little bit about the Juan Soto drama we missed. Conan Must Go finishes out its second season, and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is out this week. Let's talk about it. Here we go.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast. Did she knew her birthday was getting corona? It was like the
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Powell Not Found podcast, episode 65 here for the week of Sunday, May 25th. Happy Memorial Day. Hopefully everybody has a fun Monday out grilling burgers, grilling hot dogs, doing all the things that everybody does for Memorial Day. If you want to support the show, go ahead and find us at our YouTube channel at youtube.com at Powell Not Found, and find us wherever you listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. Rate and review the show. Let it grow. Let it grow. We ended up taking a week off last week just because I kind of mentally needed it to, and boy, what a week to not to take off in general. The Yankees were playing the Mets. Juan Soto drama was kicking off, and I knew I should have gotten on the mic at that point and addressed it, but I just kind of needed to take a little bit of rest for myself from the old digital podcast. But here I am talking about it 2 weeks late, a very timely message for everybody listening to the podcast. If you're coming to this podcast immediately, the Yankees have just taken 2 out of 3 in Colorado, which if Colorado was a normal team, that would seem like a great series win. But considering that Colorado has 9 wins on the season, boy, does this feel like a letdown, to be honest. The Rockies sit at 9-44. So when the Yankees become a team that the Rockies have beaten, a slender roster of teams that the Rockies have beaten, you don't feel good coming out of a series that you've won 2 out of 3. You don't want to be on that list. You don't want to be on the list of 9. The Rockies have gone 0-17 in series after this Yankee series, losing it 2 out of 3 for them. They have not won a series this season. You don't want to be on the list of teams that go in and drop a game to the Rockies. But here we are. The Yankees stand at 32-20 and 9-44 after a 5-4 win, a scraper. One that kind of came down to the last pitch because Weaver was kind of getting a little bit rocked around, but expected. When a team has 8 wins going into a series, you're expected to take all 3. So the Yankees take 2 out of 3. But the story of last week was the thing I wanted to comment on. Juan Soto. Boy, his return to the Bronx was something to behold. One of the more dramatic returns to Yankee Stadium that I've ever seen. There's been a lot of different players come and go over time, but nothing really with the drama or baggage attached that Juan Soto brought over the last year or so. I mean, Juan Soto was beloved in a Yankee uniform last year. He made right field exciting with his interaction with the bleacher creatures, and he had timely, incredibly productive hits. He benefited from hitting in front of Judge, hitting a season high, I believe it was 41 home runs last year. I think Juan Soto and Aaron Judge hit like 99 combined home runs last year. In 2024, he hit 41 home runs and 109 RBIs, 129 run scores. That's a season high for him, and he was third in the MVP voting. I mean, he had an all-star year last year with the Yankees. And so when the dramatic news happened in this offseason that he was signing with the Mets, we knew after all that stuff happened that there was going to be a dramatic entrance back into the Bronx. So this series, the series last week, was one that we had been waiting for a long time. We knew there were going to be boos. We knew Yankee Stadium was going to rock the socks off the place. We knew they were not going to be a cheery reception for Juan Soto. There are not a lot of players that I can name off the top of my head that have gone to the Mets willingly over signing with the Yankees. It really kind of shows you a different era of the Yankees that have kind of come and gone. I mean, in the past, the Yankees were so dominant that you would question a player's intentions about why would they want to go over to the Mets. But it's a different game. It's a different environment. The Mets have a equally as contending team as the Yankees, as their records show, as two of the best in baseball right now. But we knew it was going to be raucous. We knew it wasn't going to be friendly. And boy, did Yankee Stadium deliver. I want to say that the best things that came out of that series was the Yankee fans turning their back on Juan Soto as he entered right field. Let me see if I can get that up here for the video version of the podcast that you can find at youtube.com/PowellNotFound. Those kind of dramatics, that kind of theatrics. Yeah, there it is. Let's see. Boom. Here we go. As let me pull this up here for the video version of the podcast. Those dramatics are what you're here for to see in a baseball game. You're here to see the fans do that kind of stuff. Nobody got crazy. I'm sure they were yelling things at him. They were holding signs, as you can see, Juan Who. That's the kind of stuff that you want to see in a baseball game. You want to see that kind of stuff. And Juan Soto was milking it as he tips his hat to the crowd here, to the Yankee faithful. And as he trotted out to right field, everybody in the bleacher creatures turned their backs on him. And it was great. It was a fantastic display of fans being a part of the game, even though they're not on the field of play. And boy, did it kind of mess with him. That's the surprising thing about that whole interaction, was that Juan Soto wasn't really much of a factor. He had a couple walks in the series, and one of the biggest things that kind of came out of it was his lack of hustle. Most notably on a ground ball to LeMahieu. LeMahieu dives to his right side. Could have probably beat it out for a single, but LeMahieu makes the play because Juan Soto didn't get out of the box. This is only amplified by Juan Soto in the next series against the Red Sox at Fenway. Dunks one up against the Green Monster and doesn't hustle out of the box. And what could have been a double ends up being a single. And it ends up having questions asked about his lack of tenacity on the baseball field and who he was and whether he was affected by his reception back in Yankee Stadium. I mean, every single time that Juan Soto came back to a franchise that he had left, most notably the Nationals, he was given a warm reception. When he came back to San Diego, warm reception. He was at the Yankees less time than either of those clubs and was just booed out of his mind in a very, very loud fashion. And you want to say as a player that it probably doesn't affect you, but when you're on the field of play and you're getting booed that hard, you have to acknowledge it at some point. And I think that we saw in his lack of play, the noticeable absence of the shuffle, all of this stuff, that he is human and something is wrong. And all of this kind of led to basically the media going wild with all this stuff going, well, maybe there's something wrong with him. Maybe he's not adjusting to the Mets culture, which might be true. I mean, it's only 2 months into the season, 2 months into a 15-year contract. People were pointing out that Lindor equally started off slow with the Mets, and now he's beloved. Mike Piazza started off slow with the Mets, beloved. Retired number even. So do I think this is doomsday for Soto? No. But do I think that he may have been taken off guard by the way that he was treated by the Yankee faithful? Absolutely. There just was not any spring in his step. It made me think that maybe he was hurt as opposed to, he was playing under pain or something like that, as opposed to really being affected by the fans. But judging by some news articles that came out, notably the Bob Clappish article that came out about how he declined an interview with Sunday Night Baseball. He was not available for the reporters. I mean, it just seemed like he wanted to get out of Yankee Stadium as quickly as possible and not be responsive. And to that, I say, you can't do that. You know, if you're going to be the guy on the Mets, if that's what this contract was all about, if the contract was truly about being the face of the Mets franchise and that face of the borough, you got to learn a little bit better, learn how to deal with the New York media in a better sense. Pete Alonso, it was a perfect example of facing the media when Pete Alonso threw away that ball at home plate and the Yankees ended up scoring. He went out there and he took accountability. He said, no, this game's on me. Pete Alonso was barely a Met this offseason, and he's handling it better than Juan Soto, knowing that Juan Soto's got 15 years ahead of him, 5 or 6, depending if he takes his opt-out. But he's got 15 years on this franchise. He's got to be better about facing the music in the spot that he's put himself into. When you commandeer that much money, you can't be lurking in the shadows when it's bad and then basking in the sunlight when it's good. You have to be out there every single day, regardless of the outcome, and being that leader that you so desperately want your contract to reflect. You have to be that leader on the field. And that's what Juan Soto didn't do when he was there. Now, one could say, hey, it's the first series back. This is, an aberration. Maybe he's just going through a slump. And I would tend to agree. I don't think that you're going to read too much into 12 at-bats. Somebody can have a bad 12 at-bats. That does not mean they're going into a slump. I mean, baseball, again, game of failure. But since that Yankee series, Juan Soto is, let's see here. Juan Soto during that Yankee series ended up being, in the 3 games, he was 1 for 10 with 4 walks, 2 stolen bases, batting average of 100, OPS of 357, and a slugging of 100, an OPS of 457. Just straight up bad numbers. Since that series, and again, this is the 4 games that have followed, and I believe he's 0 for 2 tonight, the last I checked. He's 2 for 15 with 1 RBI, and 2 for 17 if we count tonight's ball game. Let me just double check on that live stat. They're playing the Dodgers tonight, and Soto is 0 for 3. 0 for 3 with an RBI, so it must have been a sac fly or a ground out or something like that. So add that, tack it onto the list. 2 for 18 since that series, right? Not snapping out of it. When asked for comment, Juan Soto the reporters after the Fenway game kind of were asking about his lack of hustle, and they asked Carlos Mendoza whether they were going to have a conversation with Juan Soto about his lack of hustle out of the box and whether that's going to be an issue going forward. Now, Mendoza, if you don't know, Mendoza, who is the manager of the Mets, was the bench coach for the Yankees for a long time under Aaron Boone. And the reason we mention that is because the first day they asked Mendoza whether they were going to make this an issue, they said, we're going to probably talk to him about it. When they asked Juan Soto, the same reporters, about his lack of hustle, they said, no, you can see me on the field. Obviously, this is not an issue. The next day, they asked Mendoza again whether they're going to address his lack of hustle, and he said, we're going to keep this in-house, which is a very Boone-like position to do. If you've been following the Yankees for any period of time, you know that when they have locker room drama, when they have a player not hustling, they tend to they don't want to make it bigger in the media, which is respectful, which is, hey, their prerogative to do. Totally understand that. But, yeah, it was funny. The flip-flop was just very, very, very stark. Last year, it took 7 years for them to punish Glaber on the Yankees for not hustling. And finally, they took him out of a game in the last year of his contract. I kind of understand that these teams do not want to upset their 15-year star. But surely, hustling out of the box, they don't want him to get hurt for something that's not serious. They don't want him to get hurt, going down the box. They have a long-term investment. But surely, if you don't know what those hustling on those plays can break a streak like this, including that Yankee series. Juan Soto is currently 3 for 25, 3 for 28 if you include the live stats against the Dodgers tonight. Those hustle hits can get people out of slumps. And that's what I think they don't quite understand as a manager, is that you have those conversations with players so you can kind of get your player back on the right track. So yeah, they may get fired up and they start doing something on the base path. They light up. I think nowadays they're a little bit more hesitant to even say anything to their player. So is there something wrong with Juan Soto? I don't think so. I think by the end of the year, you're going to probably see him put up the same numbers. Right now, he's batting with 43. He's 43 for 182. He's batting 236 with 8 home runs and 21 RBIs. I think that he's feeling the effect of not hitting in front of arguably the best player in baseball. And as a Yankee fan, that might sound biased, but when you hit in front of someone who has the AL single season home run record, and last year hit to his standards, a paltry 58 home runs, I think you're going to see those numbers drop a little bit because you're not going to be pitched as well, knowing that there's not that kind of threat behind you. And I think Juan Soto benefited from being in Yankee Stadium. I think he benefited from being in front of Judge. And I think you're seeing the effects of him being in a non-hitter's park, in a pitcher's park in Citi Field, and adjusting to a new club. I think you're going to see the numbers by the end of the year. I don't think you're really going to see a problem. I think he's going to probably be on an all-star ballot just out of popularity. He's going to be on the all-star team. Because of the fan vote. I don't think that these numbers are really even going to affect that. I think you're going to see Juan Soto in July. But I would give him a little bit more time. The Mets, I don't believe, come back to Yankee Stadium. I think the Yankees go to the Mets, and that will finish the Subway Series for the year. I could be totally wrong about that. But boy, what an entrance back into Yankee Stadium. That the Yankee Stadium didn't disappoint in terms of trying to capture the mood and really let Juan Soto know how they felt and how the whole team felt. I know as a fan, I think the Yankees benefited from having Juan Soto leave. You can see it in the lineup tonight. It's not just Judge and Soto. It is Goldschmidt, Judge, Bellinger, Dominguez is becoming a factor. Volpe is becoming a factor. Wells is struggling, but he's still going up. Up and down the lineup, we have more opportunities for people to get on base, for speed to be a factor. Right field is shored up because Judge is there. Center field is shored up because Grisham is there or Bellinger is there. Left field is still a big hole. But if the Max Fried kind of has, if Juan Soto stayed, what would the Yankees have done had Garrett Cole gone down and they couldn't get someone like Max Fried? These additions that the Yankees made have really, really paid off. And so, yes, are you going to replace the Soto-like talent? Probably not. But with all the piece parts that they put together this year, it's made for a more interesting lineup and a lineup that can produce more often and more frequently. And that's what you need. It can't be all held up by one player. Ask the 2022 Yankees. It cannot be one player the whole time. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Conan O'Brien Must Go, a new comedy series on Max going into its second season. and the new Mission Impossible movie, The Final Reckoning, coming up after the break. We'll see you then. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Again, this is the Powell Not Found podcast. You can find us at youtube.com/PowellNotFound. Go ahead and subscribe to the show and where podcasts. The audio version of the show are available wherever podcasts are served. Go ahead and rate and review the show there. That will help us out a lot. Over this Memorial Day weekend, I definitely got to see a lot of different things and catching up on shows. And one of the ones that finished up was one that I've been looking forward to for a lot, and that's Conan O'Brien Must Go, the second season of Conan O'Brien's travel show, which started last year with, I believe there were 4 episodes, Ireland and I think not Finland. It was different countries that he went to in the first season. And he starts off this season by going on 3 countries, Spain, New Zealand, and Austria. Each one kind of sillier than the last. I mean, one of the things I used to look forward to and loved about Conan's old show, whether it was the late night show or the TBS version or the very short and very brief Tonight Show, was how silly and how irreverent it was. It wasn't political. It wasn't every single day a reminder of the news or a rehash of the news as like The Daily Show or Colbert ends up being. It was just kind of dumb, and it was just kind of silly. It made you kind of laugh. It made you forget. It made you want to watch that show because it kind of reminded me of things that you do when you want to kind of get away from sometimes the mire and the misery of every single day life. And his show was great about that. It was characters talking to you out of the audience and, or silly sketches, who like the Slip Nuts or Minty the Candy Cane that briefly fell on the ground. There were things like that were made that show perfect for consumption because it was something to kind of get away from everything. When the travel shows were kind of introduced over time, specifically, Armenia, Cuba, when political relationships opened up briefly between Cuba and America, he kind of jumped at the opportunity to go. Some of them were politically motivated, like his trip to Greenland when Trump tried to buy Greenland for the first time, which has continued into the second term. He went to Greenland to try to broker the deal, when his assistant is from Armenia, Sonam Movsesian, he went to Armenia to kind of, bring his assistant to her family's origin land. They were always so fun to see these remotes that he was kind of famous for doing, an extension of sometimes David Letterman's remotes that he did, but Conan really kind of brought them to the fore. To other countries. I mean, there are hundreds of Conan remotes of him doing different jobs around America or whatever, or releasing a song or going to Manor School, becoming a Civil War reenactor, doing old-timey baseball. There's so many online from the show. And I remember it being such an exciting piece of 7-minute comedy that you could count on being ridiculous and funny Specifically, he was a Chinese food delivery man in New York. He in Harlem, he had Dapper Dan dress him up. I mean, there was crazy things and crazy premises that Conan would throw himself into, and you'd really see how funny he was as a person and as a comedian, which was hard to see sometimes in the body of work that was on the late night show, because it's a bunch of his other writers, but he'd play the straight man, or he'd play the person in disbelief, or he'd kind of go along with the premises of Tony the cameraman and all this kind of stuff. It was hard to kind of see him in every single day life. So seeing this long form type of comedy come from the show was always kind of pleasant, because you really saw how quick and how fast he was. Now, these shows, these travel shows that kind of came out of the late night format, ended up being kind of packaged up by Netflix, then Max, or whoever owns it at this point, into the Conan Without Borders series. And they went to, I feel like it was about 20, maybe 18 countries or something like that. And specifically, they went to Italy with Jordan Schlansky, and it was a big, big special. I remember that being the first special that was put out there. It's like, we're going to show this as an hour long, as opposed to like 7-minute chunks on TV. And they were great. They always worked. They were always kind of, there was always some sort of premise. They tend to work a little bit better, I think, with stories and some sort of motivation for why they're going, like the Cuba one, like the Armenia one, like the Italy one. And then they kind of reincarnated it. When they wound down the late night show, they wound down this. They started these travel shows and did season 1 last year, which we talked about on the show, and now season 2 has come along. Season 2 was 3 episodes, as opposed to, I believe, the 6 that they signed a deal for HBO Max, because one, I think his commitment with hosting the Oscars. It kind of came up, and also his parents passed away, sadly, during the filming of Austria, and so I believe they cut it short to 3 episodes, which gave us Spain, New Zealand, and Austria. In Spain, Javier Bardem is with him. New Zealand, he's kind of going around with the locals and meeting fans there, and Austria doing the same. I dare say that this season, even despite all the things that kind of happened to Conan and the Oscars and all that kind of stuff, all that said, I think it's a strong season, even though it is short. It does seem to get rolling in Austria. In the 3rd episode, you start seeing it feel more like one of those Conan Without Borders shows. They have this thesis that kind of goes through the whole show that says, like, we're here to bring you to a country and teach you nothing about the country, which is clever, and it's a very good conceit. But it made me think that, like, these premises, when they do have some sort of story attached to them, when they do have some sort of purpose for going to the country, it gives it that narrative arc that it needs in order for it to work a little bit better. When he was going to Ireland to kind of seek out his family's heritage, that was more engaging than some of the previous 3 countries where he's dressing up as characters, or you're being in a rock band or whatever, than some of the other sketches, because it just gave it a little bit of weight, emotional weight, that can kind of go along and contrast with how silly it is. There are moments in this season where it is so silly that it is tough to, there's nothing really there to give you, there's nothing really there to give you a little bit of a breather from how silly it is, because it keeps on going with the silly, with the silly, with the silly. And there's no substance in some of these series. It works in moments. It doesn't work in others. In Austria, it starts off with a Sound of Music parody, which is as funny as it is bizarre to see it open like that. But it finishes strong. I think the funny thing about this whole full circle thing is with this show in particular is that it brings the show full circle. If you really think about it, like Conan, I think it was Aaron Blair who said, like, at first you're doing comedy for the fans, and then now you're seeking out the fans to do comedy with them, and that's really tough to do. You're not in a lot of cases. Conan, when he would do those remotes, it was 7 minutes or 8 minutes that they were cutting down, where he's usually the person who's inferior to the expert instructor, wherever he is, whether he's learning a dance or whether he's learning how to do the German folklore dance or whatever, or whether he's doing Irish step dancing or whether he's at the Alvin Ailey dance school. He's always the inferior to the experts who are around him. When he goes and meets fans, though, the relationship between the two people who are on camera is very, very different. The fans who have written into the show, written into the podcast, and that's how they're kind of chosen, they usually are in awe of Conan, right? Because they are fans of Conan. So the relationship is a little bit different. He's kind of coming from the top, so it's not as, I feel like the comedy is not as free flowing because he's starting from an upper level and trying to get down to that lower level where he was with most other people that he was interacting with. If that kind of makes any sense. I know it's kind of hard to articulate. I just feel like it's slower in this season than they were in the shows. I think it was also Mike Sweeney was saying something to the effect of that they benefited from the 7 minute, 8 minute act structure of television when they were doing some of these things in late night, because they could have an act break and they could bring you back in. They could transition to something as more serious because they had a commercial break to kind of work with. Here, because it's 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 50 minutes of unadulterated, non-edited content, it's harder to transition to something more serious to kind of give you that breather, because you have to work it in yourself. And I don't know if this season really does a good job pacing out the silliness so that you get a breath and so you feel like you're not watching the same shtick over and over and over again, if that makes any sense. I would have liked to see more episodes. Obviously, circumstances didn't allow that. I wonder if it'll come back sooner, knowing that maybe there's 3 episodes left on the contract, or if season 3 will be longer. God knows. But also, what can you do? In that case, when tragedy strikes, and also the LA fires that happened, it's remarkable that this season even came out in the first place. So if you haven't watched it, it is fun. It is the positive is, as even though I didn't enjoy it as much as the first season, I still think it is one of the better and funnier and stupider comedy shows that you will watch this season, and it will kind of get you laughing. At least something in it will make you laugh, because it is just silliness, and it's something you can watch with the whole family. So that is Conan O'Brien Must Go. That's available on HBO Max or Max. One of the things that I was very, very happy to see this season, let me get it up here. One of the things I was very, very happy and excited that I was going to see was the opening this weekend of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And oh boy, I don't normally say this, but this is one of the best movies I have ever seen. It was, from beat to beat, 2 hours and 49 minutes is the runtime in this film. And long movies are generally a disaster for me. I have fears and of going to the bathroom multiple times in the show because it's so long. You look at that large Diet Coke in the concession stand, and all of a sudden you go, I'm not going to make it through half of this plot. It is so intriguing from beat to beat. It is such a good, a well-paced narrative that it goes by in a flash. I haven't many times felt like I wanted to see a movie again just because of how fantastic it was, because of the pacing, because of the visuals, and because it's Tom Cruise. You're going to have some crazy practical effect that you didn't think was possible. I went to go see it in IMAX, which is probably appropriate. I mean, everybody remembers Tom Cruise before Top Gun Maverick. Personally thanked everybody for coming to the theater and reviving the theater and making sure that the movie theaters didn't die because of the COVID pandemic. Even despite the COVID pandemic, I think movie theaters were doing a pretty good job of killing themselves with concession prices, sticky floors, and people lighting up their cell phones in the middle of it and talking throughout the movie. So they were doing a pretty good job assisting that decline. But Tom Cruise thanked everybody before Top Gun and saying, thank you for coming back to the movie theater. Thank you for being here. You know, you're doing your part, blah, blah, blah. This is how movies should be viewed. Seeing this in IMAX was how this thing should be viewed. Got to see it in IMAX in a big screen. It made the visuals pop even more than I thought they would be. It made it feel like I was immersed in it, and it was fantastic. The other thing too, going into the Final Reckoning, because Dead Reckoning came out 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. Because it was Top Gun, then it was Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, then Dead Reckoning Part 1, which this movie, Dead Reckoning Part 2, was changed to The Final Reckoning. whether I guess maybe they know there's a finality to it, because Tom Cruise is getting older, but it was only a couple years ago that this movie came out, and my biggest fear going into this movie was, I don't remember anything about that movie. I remember it ended on a train. I remember Vanessa Kirby was in it because she was in The Crown at the time, or at least the time I was watching The Crown. And I remember that it ended on a cliffhanger. And I didn't know how we got there, who we were fighting, what we were fighting. And luckily, I went in and watched a YouTube recap, something on 4 minutes. God bless the YouTuber making that recap. I don't know. I don't know I don't remember the handle of the YouTuber. I should, but they did a recap, 4 minutes. Boom! I was back on board. I couldn't tell you the pros or the lore that's attached to the other remaining 7 films, or that are 6 films that are previous here. I did not jump into Mission Impossible in the very, very beginning. This movie made me go back and watch the first Mission Impossible because it got me so invested in it. And I feel like that's the key to a good movie franchise. If you want to go back and watch the rest, then you're hooked. You're in it. If you're seeing Fast and Furious 2000 and you want to go back and watch Fast and Furious 1000, you're hooked, right? Mission Impossible has 8 films in the franchise right now. I wanted to go back to the first one. I recommend that you do that because the pacing and the stark contrast between the first and the last is amazing. It is very different. It feels like a totally different film. It feels like it was made in a totally different era because it was made in a totally different era. They even make an allusion to that in the film, talking about 35 years of Mission Impossible in the theaters. 35 years. Not many franchises can boast that they've been around for 35 years. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible, and Fast and the Furious, because I think 3 Fast and Furious movies came out since the start of this podcast. I'm not certain about that fact, but you can fact check me on that. It's an amazingly paced movie. They do a really, really good job of bringing you up to speed in a way that's different, in a way that, it might seem exposition heavy in the beginning, but it's necessary because they seem to have an awareness that people are going to come in not remembering everything, every single beat of Mission Impossible. And why would you? You know, you hold on to these experiences for about a week until you're like, what happened in the movie that we just saw? You know, so they do a good job bringing you up to speed. I remember feeling amazed too. Mission Impossible has typically, since the very first one, they have a pretty amazing opening credits scene, which is absent from most movies. I feel like most movies you have a beautiful drone shots and then boom, you have a title card. This one, there was a lot of stuff that happened before, a lot of action, a lot of exposition, catching you up, and then the title scene, which is beautifully edited, comes at you and blows you away. And I remember saying, I thought we were in the movie at this point. I thought we were rolling and we were just going to not have a title card. And then it comes at you and it makes you appreciate video editing in a totally different way, because it's not really, 3D, crazy CGI. It is just beautifully cut in a way that's fast. It's electric. It makes you kind of think of the 1960s show opening and all the ones that have come before it. And it immediately made me think of James Bond and how much of a different energy that those opening credits, which that franchise has been, that's another franchise that's been around for 35 years, more than 35 years, that like has an opening credit scene, but it's such a different vibe. I feel like with Bond, you have an action film and boom, it goes into the opening credit scene, and you're going to enjoy like a 4 to 5 minute slow burn of somebody singing a very loosely attached song that's about the show or about the movie, and singing a ballad as you see these like opaque and scantily clad people just kind of in front of your screen. That's what you're going to get, right? Most Bond films, especially the latest ones, which take on the more serious tone, right? This one is anything but that. Mission Impossible hits you in the face and keeps on going. And it's just punch, punch, punch. It lands those punches each time. And it doesn't really let you have time to breathe. And that's what makes this pacing amazing. Because really, by the time it doesn't overstay its welcome in any of its scenes, even when Ethan Hunt is captured, you're not going to stay in that situation for very long before you're globe-trotting to another set. It really reminded me of Indiana Jones or Uncharted, all those things where by the time you really take a breath, by the time you look away, you're in a totally different part of the world, trying to chase down the antagonist of the film. And in this case, the antagonist still is the Entity, which is an AI programming that's taking over the world's nuclear arsenals. Something that resonates, I guess, way more true than it probably did even 2 years ago with all the rise of AI stuff that's in the news and in everyone's workflow and stuff like that. Obviously, this is a fictitious plot, but it certainly resonates a lot more than it did maybe when Dead Reckoning was out. So it's great in pacing as that. Some negatives, some interesting cast choices in this particular movie. Nick Offerman plays one of the president's confidants in this movie, and Hannah Waddingham, who is from Ted Lasso, plays like a Navy commander in this film. Very hard to separate those two characters from who they are, not only in real life, especially Nick Offerman. Because Nick Offerman, to me, he's so Ron Swanson and he's so Nick Offerman. He's so distinctively himself that it's really hard to even pull yourself out of it. It reminded me again of seeing Brad Pitt in 10 Years a Slave. You're like, I'm sorry, I can't pull out Brad Pitt away from this movie. I can't not see him as Brad Pitt, which happens to a lot of actors over time. Hannah Waddingham, less so, but it still was an issue. I think her character, getting away from that Ted Lasso character, her accent changed in this one. That was a good move. But her playing this different role, it was very hard to unsee it. So it may not have been the greatest casting choices in the world to go with them, although their characters are good, especially Nick Offerman's character. They're fantastic in the film. So in that case, I thought the negatives were there. The positives, I mean, the visual effects are some of the best visual effects I've ever seen in a movie. Especially, there's a sequence with an Ohio-class submarine. Unbelievable visuals. Obviously not practical. Tom Cruise is not near that submarine in real life. But the practical, I'm assuming, because I remember seeing clips of him hanging onto the side of a plane. There is a plane sequence where he's hanging off the side of it. Practical. I mean, that's half of the reason why you go see a Mission Impossible at this point, because you know Tom Cruise is going to do something unimaginable, and it's not going to be faked. Dead Reckoning had the famous, I believe it's Dead Reckoning, the last one, had the famous motorcycle jump that was real. You know, it's him doing it. It's not a stunt man, it's him. This one, he's hanging off the side of a plane that looks like it was built by Orville Wright, and all practical. It seems like it's like, I imagine some of it's faked and stuff like that, but like there is a clip of him hanging off the side of a plane, so I can only imagine that it's real. And that's why you see these films, because of their amazing set pieces and their amazing practical effects. The other thing truly that's kind of fun about these films is how camp they are. They do a good job of keeping the comedy light. There is a truly cartoon, I believe it's before the title card, there's a truly cartoonish sequence a couple times in the films that give you kind of pause. Like it kind of gives you a break away from all of the action, because some sequences in Mission Impossible are very, very hard to watch. They're like a little gruesome at times. That's always been true throughout the whole series. But there's a cartoonish sequence where he's beating somebody up, and you just see Haley, I think it's Haley Atwell, looking at this destruction that's happening off screen, and you just hear sound effect after sound effect, something that you would almost hear in a comedy or in like some vaudevillian play, and it happens. There are moments of improv that happen between the characters that it seems like they just kind of left in. There's a moment with Simon Pegg that when he's in a bad way, he's trying to kind of convey something, and he's drifting off, and he comes back because he subverts your expectations that way. They keep these moments in, and they're very important. I mean, if you really look at the dire state of the world in Mission Impossible, these moments shouldn't be happening, but they do a good job keeping them in and making sure that you know that it's not as serious as Bond is. And I think it harkens back to when Bond was campy, when it was a little bit of this attitude, when Pierce Brosnan was James Bond as opposed to Daniel Craig. It was like this Mission Impossible. It was a little bit more corny, but it had that kind of element running through it, and this Mission Impossible does as well. Lastly, I want to say my only negative from the film did not come from the film itself. It came from the movie theater that I saw it in. Saw it at an AMC. Movie time was at 2 p.m. I don't normally see a movie on the day that it comes out, but I saw it on the Friday of release. I know there are Thursday showings now. There's probably Wednesday showings now at some point. But I did see this movie on a Friday, on the Friday that it came out, 2 p.m. showtime. There were about 20 minutes previews, which is pretty typical. And then there was commercial after commercial after commercial. There was a commercial about IMAX, which, okay, it's understandable. You're going to an IMAX theater. Then there's a commercial about light and how light transcends the screen. And I'm like, are we going to go all the way back? Like, are we going to be like, in the first day he created light? Like how far are we going to go back with these commercials? Then there was another commercial with Nicole Kidman, who's congratulating me about going to the theater. Then there's another one saying, get ready for your movie. Like, at some point, how many times do we have to get ready to see the movie that we purchased? You know, at what point do the ads stop? I mean, why not put in a Wygovie ad by the end of the movie theater? In the middle of before the showing? I mean, how many things need to be played before the movie goes? I know that they're struggling, but it was a little nuts. It wasn't until 2:30 until the movie finally started. And that's my biggest negative, is because when you have a 2 hour and 49-minute movie and you have 30 minutes of credits, that can change your day dramatically if you're not accounting for those 30 minutes. Plenty of people were walking in right when the last preview and the last commercial were. I think people that are going to an AMC probably have better planning skills than I do, because they probably knew, hey, no, you go at 2:30. If it says 2, go at 2:30, because you're going to miss an F1 trailer, which I'm very excited about, coming out in July, end of June, and a Jurassic World trailer, which is, I believe, coming out in July. But they did it in a better way than I did, because by the end of the commercial, I just thought, we're never seeing this movie. I think they might run commercials forever at this point. 30 minutes. It used to be 20 minutes when I was a kid. 30 minutes. That is too much. That's too much. That's too much for the average movie theater to go through. You got to tell your patrons when the start time is for your movie. And anyways, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Again, we are the Powell Not Found podcast. You can find us at YouTube at Powell Not Found and wherever podcasts are served. We will see you next week. Everybody have a safe and happy Memorial Day, and we will see you next week with more baseball news, with more movie news, with more TV news, with more entertainment news, with whatever I want to talk about. I know, the theme is weird. See you later.